Welcome to the Healthy, Wealthy, and Smart podcast. Each week, we interview the best and brightest in physical therapy, wellness, and entrepreneurship. We give you cutting-edge information you need to live your best life, healthy, wealthy, and smart. The information in this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and should not be used as personalized medical advice. And now, here's your host, Dr. Karen Litzy.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Karen Litzy, and in today's episode, Dr. Shannon Sepulveda is back, and holy cow, is she back in a big way with her guest, Nikki Kimball. Nikki Kimball is an American distance runner specializing in the ultramarathon. She ran her first 100-mile race at the Western States 100-mile endurance run in 2004 and was the female winner. She was the winning female at Western States again in 2006 and 2007, becoming only the third woman to win Western States 3 times. In 2014, she won the Marathon, I'm going to screw this up, Des Sables multi-stage endurance race on her first attempt. Prior to running, her main sport was cross-country skiing. She was crewed at the 2007 Western States by U.S. Senator Max Baucus of Montana, where Kimball lives. She lives in Bozeman, Montana, and she is also a physical therapist. And she is one of the most, I cannot stress this enough, she is one of the most accomplished ultra runners alive on the planet. And she sat down with Shannon for an awesome interview. So they talk about Nikki's journey to becoming a long-distance running athlete, the societal health and wellness ramifications of running, which Nikki speaks to and teaches through her profession as a physical therapist, and how her experience as a physical therapist has shaped her running journey, and gender differences, both physical and financial, in competitive running. This will blow your mind. And it really goes to show you that people who do this ultra running and who are in these races, I mean, it is a family. They do it because they love it. They don't do it for the money. They don't do it for the recognition. And Nikki is an amazing role model for any woman out there in any sport. So a huge thank you to Dr. Shannon Sepulveda for this really wonderful interview. It's a long one, but it is worth it. So thanks, Shannon, and thank you, Nikki, for being such a superb guest on the podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Healthy, Wealthy, and Smart podcast. I am your guest host, Shannon Sepulveda, and I am here with Nikki Kimball. Hi, Nikki.
Hi, Shannon.
So, Nikki, can you tell us a bit about you and what you do?
About me and what I do.
Yeah.
My favorite subject. I am a physical therapist here in Bozeman, and I also coach running, coach ultramarathon running. And I got into that because I've been an ultramarathon racer, professional racer for almost 2 decades. And that's kind of what I do.
So in the ultra marathon running world, when you say Nikki Kimball, people are like, oh, Nikki Kimball? And I feel like, so Nikki is a very accomplished ultra marathoner for those of you who don't know who Nikki is. So we are very, very fortunate to have her here on the podcast. So how did you get into ultra running? Because back then it seemed like it's not as popular as it is now.
No, I don't think it is, but I think there was. But there were still a boatload of us. I mean, there were thousands of us who absolutely love this sport. And we, there wasn't much money in it or anything like that. It wasn't very popular. But I think a lot of cross-country skiers come into it sort of organically because the training we do for cross-country skiing is essentially ultramarathon training. Which is kind of funny because the women don't get to race very far. I mean, the longest they can do is 30K at the Olympics. It's pretty pathetic. But regardless, we always trained with the guys anyway. So we would do these 4 or 5 hour run, hike things in the woods. And so I was kind of doing it anyway. And in graduate school, I raced a lot of 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, just kind of wherever, because I had a store team that sponsored me, and they'd pay all my race entry fees, and so I just go do fun things, and it just it sort of saved me through grad school because it gave me this other thing besides studying all the time, and it made me sort of mentally clearer. But I just... I don't know where to go with that. I just loved it. I mean, I'm just like, running makes me happy. It just makes sense to go out and run. And so, yeah, at the time it wasn't mainstream popular, but those of us who did it loved it. Yeah. Did it all the time.
Yeah. So you grew up Nordic skiing?
Yes.
In high school?
High school.
Okay. Where did
Since
you grow
I could
up?
walk. I grew up in a town called Chittenden in Vermont. It's just a south central Vermont town. And I grew up skiing. My brother was 4 years older, so he was a skier. And the Bill Koch Youth Ski League is this big thing then. I don't know if it still is, but there would be these races for kids. And because, you know, I mean, the kids who would be racing, you know, from 8 years old on, they kind of knew what they were doing, but they had to do something for like the little brothers and sisters. So they'd have these races they called lollipop races, because you get a lollipop at the end. And you might go 100 meters, maybe holding your parent's hand. But I believe I was 3 when I first did that. I basically learned how to ski and walk at the same time, I'm sure. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, I just don't remember life without competition and without endurance sports.
Yeah. Yeah. And then did you race in college?
And I raced at Williams College, so all 4 years. So Division I racing. Then partway through college, I decided to switch to biathlon. So my senior year, I had to keep my rifle at a professor's house because they weren't too keen on having rifles on campus. And so I raced a couple of years in biathlon, hoping for the 98 Olympics, and I raced through 94. Oh,
wow. So how is biathlon different from cross-country skiing, like endurance-wise? What do you think?
Similar, really similar. I mean, it's just adding this sort of cognitive piece to it. I mean, to go from skiing as hard as you can to shooting clean for 5 rounds is it just requires a whole different skill set of patience and humility and cognition. I mean, looking at where the wind is and deciding what how to change your sights on your rifle. But it's it's just an extra layer, and I loved that.
Do you feel like that has influenced your ultra racing at all? That like part of it?
Probably not a ton.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the calmness needed to do well in biathlon, and the humility is super helpful. So those two things are good, because if you're racing 100 miles, something is going to go wrong in running. It doesn't, like, you don't have perfect races when you're beyond 20 hours. Yeah. You just don't. And so having, biathlon does teach a bit of that sort of humility, but also ability to change with the changing situation. You might come into the range and the wind's coming from a completely different direction than it was when you sighted your rifle in, and you have to deal with that. And similarly in ultramarathon, it's very common that you come into an aid station and the bag of stuff that you wanted there isn't there, or your crew isn't there, or something that you expected isn't there. And so that ability to think during the race and make changes to your plan during the race is definitely something. It is common between the ultra running and biathlon.
Cool. So then when you say graduate school, do you mean physical therapy school?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And so how did you get into running there? Because it sounds like that's where the transition went into ultra running. Is that right?
Yes, or where the transition into competitive running. Yeah, okay. Yeah, absolutely. Because through 94, I was ski racer, which is sort of a different body type also.
Like more muscular.
And a lot more upper body mass. Yeah. And so, through 94, ski racing was the only thing I really wanted to do. And I also was kind of, I hadn't raced anything long in running, so I wasn't I wasn't good. I was fantastic for the middle of the pack. So, I hadn't really realized that I that I had any ability in running, because my ability's not in running, it's in enduring. And
you've run some fast 5Ks before.
Yeah, but nothing that would get me on a college team. I was 15th on a D3 running team my freshman year at Williams, and I always qualified for nationals in D1 skiing. I mean, there was definitely something I wasn't good at. But then I actually, in 94, after a really successful year of biathlon, doing well at Olympic trials, I wasn't expecting to make the team because I couldn't shoot very well, and did very well at nationals, and then I ended up getting very sick with depression, losing about 20 pounds, and I couldn't even run 3 miles. Like I couldn't do anything. I was just sleeping, all I did. And when I went to grad school, I came in with a completely different body. I mean, I had lost all my muscle, and really running, and I was in Philadelphia, so I'm like, what can I do? I mean, so running was the thing I could do, and this was way before most psychiatrists and counselors were thinking that exercise was important for running. But I sort of knew it, I just knew that I could think better. I could function better. I could all of those things, everything better when I'm exercising. And so it was sort of natural for me to just my daily dose of endorphins that is just critical to me even having normal brain function, would be like I'd have to run an hour a day just to stay sane. So then I went to graduate school. Like I'm in Philadelphia, and I go and do this 5K road race, and I win it. And I'm like, what the heck? I am not a runner. This is crazy. And then the store team picks me up, and then we just started running longer and longer and more trails. And so it wasn't something I never set out to be a good ultramarathon runner. It just sort of it just was what I did anyway. And then I realized it was a sport. Yeah.
That's a really cool story. Awesome. So what was ultra running like when you started, and how is it different now? Because I mean, how long ago was it when you started?
I started in 99.
99.
So
okay, 20 years ago.
Yeah. It was still very, very competitive at the top. Yeah. But the fields were not as deep.
Yeah.
And there wasn't. It was never talked about in Runner's World. I don't think Runner's World even knew what ultra running really was, and it didn't really need to. It's a great magazine, but it was way like Runner's World is for sort of mainstream runners and getting people into running, and it's fantastic for that. But ultra running was never something that would even be considered in, for their audience. Yeah, and I think that's really telling. Now they talk about ultra running and that kind of stuff, and ultra running is now becoming appealing to your general public. It's just not something that's freaky anymore because it's so in the running media and so obvious in the running media, and so that's a big part of it. It's part of me wants to go back to the old ways where you raced and you had only water at the aid stations, and and the aid stations might be 2 hours apart, and and you won a belt buckle after you set a world record in a something. It was great. Not that I ever set any world records, but that's the trail runner part of me. But that was kind of nice. It just wasn't very commercial, but and now it is more so. But I'm also part of that. I mean, I was in films about running, several films about running. I was promoting, Nike, North Face, Hoka, whichever sponsor I had at the time, and kind of using my running to promote basic health and fitness things. And, I definitely was heavily involved in media surrounding running. So the increase of popularity of running, I'm not innocent in that.
Oh, I think it's awesome. Like, I think it's really great because not everybody's going to be fast in a 5K. Right. And some people are really good. It's completely different. Being fast in a 5K is completely different than running 100 miles. Yeah. It's totally different. And some people are really good at it, and some people are not. And some people, the accomplishment of running 50 miles or 18 miles or whatever will get them on a high for a whole year. I mean, the fact that they can do that. So I think that's amazing.
And it'll get them training for a whole year, which makes them healthier.
Yes.
You know, in an age in which sedentary lifestyle is our biggest killer, or contributes to it anyway, we really need to make sports mainstream. And running is so easy, and it's something we don't need special equipment for. You can do it on any budget.
And you can still compete in it.
And you can, although that's getting expensive.
Yeah, it is getting expensive. But I mean, it's like you can't, like if you were a baseball player, you can't just go play baseball games a lot of the time. But if you're a runner, you can always say, I'm going to sign up for X race and train for X race.
Yes.
And so when you're an adult,
perfect lifetime sport.
Yeah.
And you can do it if you're running, if your running team, let's say you want to do stuff with people, your running team doesn't show up for a workout, you can do that workout on your own.
Right.
You can be as social or isolated as you want to be. And I think runners know that. Sometimes, you and I are both physical therapists. Sometimes we have a whole day of patients. We want to go out and run 5, 10, whatever miles by ourselves because we need that break.
And not talk.
Because
we talk all day.
Yeah, exactly. And then other times, you want to go out with a group of 10 people and just, just chat the whole way. And I swear that if political leaders could do all of their work while running, things would actually work. I mean, because I swear every long run you go on, somebody comes up with an idea that just, seems brilliant.
Yeah. And you get to talk to people who believe different things and have actual conversations with people because there's nothing else to do.
Right.
You're out in the woods for 4 hours.
Right.
And that's who you're with. And you can talk about stuff and you're not checking your phone. And no, I think it's great.
Yeah. And it's something that's so foreign to us in modern times.
Correct.
We're always sort of plugged in and we're always hanging out with only others like us. And running sort of takes all that away.
Yeah.
I really like that.
And I think, even, when I get postpartum women in here and they want to run a 5K after they've had a baby and they're like, well, I'm not really a competitive runner. I really want to run this 5K. And I'm like, that is awesome. I really want to run it in under 30 minutes. Well, that's such a great goal. Let's do that. And it's attainable and it's great and it gives people a goal of something to do.
Right.
It doesn't have to be 100 miles,
No, it doesn't.
Which is so
that's
cool.
Such a beautiful thing about running. And it's, and I love about ultra and running in general is that different variations on running are becoming popular, whether it's Spartan racing or color runs or, none of those events is going to attract every person, but it's going to attract somebody. And if somebody gets hooked because they like having paintballs thrown at them, great. That if that keeps that person from getting type 2 diabetes, I mean, it's the cheapest medicine we can buy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why it's so awesome being a physical therapist, because we know how important exercise is and getting people back to that. So, they don't die and they don't get type 2 diabetes and they don't get heart disease.
Right. And we're not rehabbing their total knee replacements because of obesity.
Right.
If they have a total knee replacement, it's because they earned it.
Yeah, I think it's so great just to be able to have, running become more mainstream so it's more accepted and people are really excited about it. I mean, when you go to marathons and you see people of all shapes and sizes completing marathons, I think it's
so cool.
And it's so different from when it was 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, marathons didn't they certainly didn't encourage and often didn't allow people to finish a marathon in 6 hours or more. And now we've got that. I mean, and there just has to be a place in athletics for all adults. Because if this is the way we are going to stay healthy in a world that is more and more sedentary, then we need to make it fun, because otherwise it's not going to be sustainable for most people. And, and we also need to to have resources out there for people to do these sports. And I just keep seeing more and more emphasis on building trails and on making shoulders on roads so that people can safely bike or run or whatever. I think the more these sports grow, the more people demand from their local government that we have trails and that we have safe places to work out and play and do all those things that are just going to save us money in the end because we're all healthier.
Yeah. No, I think it's great. So let's talk about how has being a physical therapist impacted your career? Probably for the better and for worse. Probably like me overanalyze everything.
Right, exactly. I mean, I'm sure you remember when you're first a physical therapist and you're working in general orthopedics and you see people coming in and they're in their 60s and that's old to you because you're in your 20s. And and you're like, oh my gosh, I have all these things that are going to happen to me. So you start getting these ideas of things that happen with aging. So that's actually probably good, a little cautionary tale there. But it for the first 18 years of my ultra running career, I never missed significant time from races from any running injury. I mean, the races that I missed were mostly from direct trauma because I, fell off something. Or, trail running's a little aggressive, and I also mountain bike and dirt bike and ski race and do all that. So, I definitely have had injuries, but they're usually direct trauma, not repetitive trauma. And I think PT has been the biggest factor in that. I mean, also I just have good genetics, but I could, having treated every running injury there is, I could see when one was coming up, and I think that helped a lot. Yeah. Like, oh, I've got this little twin. Oh, that's not just muscle soreness. That sounds more like, IT aband. And maybe I should have somebody look and see if my hip is strong or if if I'm overstriding or whatever. And so I think, running, injury is a huge deal in running, and prevention of an injury is so much more important than fixing it. I mean, you just... and PT has given me the patience for that, okay, I know I need to take a week and be water running now because I've worked with so many people who didn't do that, and now they're out for 4 or 5 months. And so I didn't want to be that person. Do you see
differences in injuries between ultra runners and like your recreational 5K-er?
Yes and no. Your recreational 5K-er, often it's their first year running, and they're much more likely to get injured. And injuries that are completely preventable, just because they just sort of get into it without any guidance. Ultra runners, first of all, probably have the genetics that are that allow them to run that long. So they're probably mechanically more ready to run ultras. And then some of the ultra running injuries we see are just they can be really serious because we can I think once we're out there racing, to be successful, you have to be able to put pain in a little box or just sort of deflect it. And you really don't, like when I was racing, I really didn't feel pain so much because I could just sort of play in my head with it. And so you can get people who, in ultra running, who will go into a race with a stress fracture and it becomes a frank fracture. And I've seen that with several ultra runners. And, that's not, your recreational 5K runner might get a stress fracture, but they're probably actually going to go seek help while it's still a stress fracture and not going to let the bone actually break in half. So sometimes ultra runners can be a little aren't good at using pain as a guide. I think your recreational 5K runner is going to come into you when their knee starts hurting or their ankle starts hurting, and they're going to be like, "Hey, something's funky here." And so I think those recreational 5K runners are much more likely to get injured, but their injury is also going to be much easier to manage. And ultra runners, most of us, I think, are addicts to the sport and to running and to exercise. And, I just know how tempted I am to run if injured, because I have to work out or I'm just staring at the wall being brain dead. I mean, I really, without, at least a few times a week infusion of endorphins, I don't function. And I think a lot of our ultra runners are that way, and we can so we basically go until something's really bad.
If we're talking about, so I'm always interested in the mental aspect of pain. So when you were like racing in your, cross country racing biathlon, you're like super anaerobic.
Yeah.
Like you got to get over that governor in your head that says slow down.
Yes.
Right. So that sort of mental capacity for pain versus I'm on mile 90, I have pain everywhere. It seems like a different type of pain. Do you classify those as a different type of pain in your head, or are they kind of the same?
I think in my head they're the same or similar. In ski racing, I could always say, or in biathlon, well, I'm going to lie down at the end of this kilometer to take a bunch of shots. So, that pain is there, but I think I dealt with it mentally by it's going to be over very quickly, and it always was.
Yeah.
So in that, it's somewhat different. But so ultra running, you have less intense pain spread out for a lot longer period of time, and so I don't get to say, oh, well, it's going to be over soon because now you have another 4 hours left. And I think that got me to the point where I would think of pain as this is just this neural sensation. It's nothing more than that. There's no reason to put any emotion into this sensation that's coming in. I mean, I think part of what gives pain its power is fear of pain. And in an ultra run, you have long enough, you're out there long enough to think that you have to deal with pain in a different way. And if I can just take its power away by saying, okay, I have a nerve signal telling me that my hip hurts or my knee hurts, but that's all it is. It's just a neural signal. And because I think the anesthetic effect of our chemical changes when we run, we can do it. I mean, I don't think I'm really tough about pain. Like if we're just sitting here and, somebody hits me, it's going to hurt just as much. But while I'm running, I can take so much more. And as long as you don't fear it, it's just way, way easier to tolerate.
It's so interesting because it like when I hear you talk, there's such similarities to chronic pain and like what we know about chronic pain and how as like PTs we treat chronic pain, where it's like, these are just neural sensations coming in. The brain controls it. The brain controls where you are, what you're doing. Do I need to get out of here? And how we gradually increase people's exposure to certain things to get them out of chronic pain. Right. So when I hear you talk, that's like exactly what I think of. Like you think about it as a neural sensation, not, this emotional response that you have to like give into.
Right. And, I think that ultra running can be a very good metaphor for life in many ways, and that's one of the ways. And I think that medicine, both physical medicine, physical therapy, plus medicine, like human medicine, are starting to research ultra running, which is incredible. And I think we need to look at things like ultra running for managing chronic pain. We need to look at ultra running to see, well, it doesn't have to be ultra running, any running, but I think we need to do more and more research to find like what is it that's benefiting here. Like if we can, I would think it would be extraordinarily hard to thrive through chronic pain. I mean, we've both worked with so many people with chronic pain, and it's really, really horrible. But if you can, do you just give up? I mean, we don't have like a pill for it. No. We don't have anything that will just kind of get rid of it right away. Nothing. And so we have to be able to manage it. And I think ultra running is about managing stuff. And so maybe somebody in medicine finds out what factors allow us to thrive despite that pain and to and to win the race despite the pain that we're in. And certainly there's a lot of research out there on mental health. What is it? We know there are 6 or 8 different things that we're changing when we're running that might affect our cognition and mental state. Like, what is it? We don't really know. But we know something about running is lessening the effects of depression and other mental illnesses. And we know that it's lessening the effects of some pains. So it's just this brilliant area of untapped research, there's or research opportunity. There's just so much out there, and it's very much in its infancy. But you are seeing people being serious about running medicine now.
Yeah, it's really interesting when I hear you say manage the pain, because that's like when I have conversations with my patients that have had chronic pain for years. I, have a conversation of like, this is chronic. We are going to manage it. You are going to have flare-ups, and you're going to manage it, and it's going to get better. But at some point, you're going to have a flare-up, and it's going to be okay. Right. And so when you think about managing versus curing, it's, I guess, very similar to ultra running. Like,
it is.
I'm in mile 80. I'm going to manage this.
Right.
Because I've got to finish it.
Right.
And it's going to flare up, and I'm going to manage it, and it's going to get better.
Yes, exactly. And, I think this is where all types of medicine need to come together. Yeah. It's neuro, it's psych, it's mechanics, it's all of those things. Because how else are we going to let people live quality lives with chronic pain or mental illness, any of those kinds of things? And ultra running is a sort of microcosm. It's like like your whole, it's like a lifetime in 100-mile race. And so I think there are really important pieces of information in there that can be applied to our world in general.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is gender equity in ultra running, or running in general. Both, prize money sponsorship, but also physiologically. So which one do you want to start with first?
Let's go with prize money and sponsorship.
Okay, well, let's go with prize money and sponsorship.
I might as well get myself fired up.
Okay, so just talk about it, because I know you're a very good advocate for women and gender equity, and this is a problem in many sports. So let's talk about the problem in ultra running.
It is a problem in many sports. And I must say, on the good side, just to start this out on a good note, the changes through my lifetime and how women are treated in sport have been amazing. When I started racing in the 70s, there were oftentimes, races just for men, or, the men would get prize money and the women wouldn't get any. And that was really, really common. We just sort of expected that. And, all through high school and college, and this still happens, unfortunately, being a high-level ski racer, the women, we would race 5K when the men race 10K, and that stuff is still happening, but getting better. Hopefully, sometimes that's changing. And sometime in the 2000s, you just really stopped seeing prize money be different, because prize money is so transparent. And there were still a few holdout races that would prize the men and wouldn't prize the women. And in Europe, that was very common, which is kind of shocking to me. But many races, money for the men, and something cute for the women, and but the gender fights for gender equity already had enough traction behind them to to finally to get to really call out race directors who didn't prize equally. And with the internet and with everything being really, with being able to get that information really easily from your computer, race directors would look really, really horrible at this point if they weren't prizing equally. And so the last 15 years has been pretty good that way. Then we have sponsorship.
Yeah.
And most of our contracts tell us, we aren't supposed to talk about how much we're getting paid. And that's a brilliant strategy by the marketing people on these big companies that sponsor runners, because why pay a woman what she's worth when you can pay her 12 times less. And that's not an unreasonable, that actually I have seen that, an order of magnitude difference between males and females. Why pay her that? If your customers, when they go to buy that jacket, don't know that Sarah gets paid $5,000 a year and Joe gets paid $10,000 or $100,000 a year, why would we? Why would they pay that? And I think that's the next area to go. Is that, or to get down to and really dig into. Hopefully, the last one. There's still other subtle forms of sexism that happen, but this is still a major form of sexism that's happening, and I fought it all through my professional career. And then once I started trying to add up how much I would have made if I'd done the same thing as I did, but be a male. And once I realized that I would probably have an extra house in the most expensive part of town, I decided to stop torturing myself. So that has, some sort of transparency there has to happen. But the subtle stuff, some athlete contracts give you bonuses for getting their logo in print media or on television or all of those things. We'll still look through the sports pages in any local paper, and they're still often, 8 pictures of men compared to 1 picture of a woman, or even if it's 2 men to each woman in the sports pages, that's money we're not getting because
you're not in the picture.
Yep. I won the race, but the guy's winner gets in there. And you still look at Wikipedia. If you look up Wikipedia or any of those race sites, or any Wikipedia or sites of running sites, they'll often have. They'll talk about a race and they'll say, the course record is held by, and it's always the guy. No, I also have the course record.
Right.
But so then again, the men get so much more promotion from media and all of that, and then that gets the sponsors thinking that they have a better return on investment from the men, because the men are like, look, here's what, here are all the newspaper articles I was in, magazine articles I was in, and that's, so those more subtle types of sexism are harder to fight. And I think some of us are doing it. Gina Lucchese is an ultra runner and a very, very solid ultra runner, but also really great supporter of women's ultra running, and has started a company called Trail Sisters that is huge and just getting bigger and bigger. And it is to address some of these issues, and also address other physiological issues that women have to face. This is, these things are happening. It's just not as fast as I'd like.
I know. It's so hard. I feel like the same thing happens even with small companies. I follow Oiselle a lot, and they've just had to fight tooth and nail just to even get, compared to Nike or something like that, just to even get themselves there. And they're a running company for women. But it's just, no matter what, it seems like we're fighting an uphill battle.
Yes, we are. And, I remember just a few years ago, I had a couple women runners I was treating, and I was like, we get into the talk about sponsorship money, and I'm like, well, they've got to be doing better than I did. And both of them were like, yeah, we're about 25% of what the men were. I'm like, well, that's better than I did at my worst. At least they're not getting 1/10, but still, it's not okay.
Yeah, it's not okay. And so what do you think we can do?
I think we talk, we keep open dialogue. We support people like Gina who have Trail Sisters. We support brands like Oiselle who are trying to make a difference. And I think that each of us, each female athlete is one cog in the machine of getting female athletics taken seriously. There was a time when women weren't allowed to run a marathon because our uterus would fall out, which makes a lot of sense as a women's health specialist.
Right.
It's gross when it happens, but but all this, like each of us just does her part to make it a little bit more fair. The unfortunate thing is each of us doing our part makes us less sponsorable, because if I'm out there whining about sponsors treating me poorly versus my male counterparts, they're not going to want to sponsor me. But at this point, it doesn't matter because I'm past my professional career anyway. But I do know I probably, could have been more quiet and, tried to look cute and race that way, and probably that would have been better for sponsorship, because you definitely notice that the women getting on covers of magazines, it's not necessarily the fastest ones, but they're always cute, and that's not so much the case in the men's. I mean, I'm sure men face it in some ways, but I don't think that male sponsorship has as much to do with how they look, and if they're willing to put pictures of themselves in a sports bra as their profile picture on Facebook or whatever. So yeah, it's just a huge topic.
It is. I know. It brings me back to, I played tennis when I was younger, and so it brings me back to a New York Times article a while ago on Venus Williams and Sharapova, and it was just like how much more money she got.
Right.
Venus Williams,
for being worse.
For being not as good. But she's pretty, and I mean, yeah, I'm sorry, it wasn't Venus, it was Serena Williams.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, either one.
Serena Williams, obviously. Yeah.
But that sort of Sharapova thing happens everywhere.
Yeah.
When I just, yeah.
So let's talk about physiology.
Yeah.
When are the women going to beat the men?
Women beat the men.
When do the women beat the men?
When the race is long and difficult and has really bad conditions. Like, men do have a physiological advantage.
Yeah.
They absolutely do. And we need to have that's why we need a men's race and a women's race.
Yeah.
Because they absolutely have a huge physiological advantage. However, when stuff gets bad, women thrive. It's so cool to see. I mean, I know that if I'm in the last 10 miles of a 100-mile race and I come upon a guy, I'm going to beat him. If I come upon a woman, it's on, and that's not just because we're competing against each other. It's because women just, I see this in my practice as well. Another biological difference is we do tolerate pain better. And so, and is that biologically something that happens so that we can survive childbirth? Right. I don't know. But women, but I think it is a real thing. Like, I think that pain probably hurts more for a guy than for a woman on average, and that's totally on average.
Right.
But women just push themselves they're just able to push through so much.
Yeah.
So, all the times I've been in a national or world-class event that I've been on the men's podium, which has been 3 times, it's been bad conditions. One of the hottest years at Western States, I was 3rd out of the men. And, there were a lot of men there who could have beaten me, but they it's super hot and they're just dropping like flies, and the women are just kind of like, da-da-da, we're fine. Yeah. So there's got to be, something going on there. And how much of it is social construction, and how much of it is biology, and how much of it is psychology, and, all of these things playing a role. I do know that we do relatively better to the men when things get tough.
It's like grit.
Yeah.
I wonder if I'm just thinking about, since I'm a women's health PT, like sleep deprivation. I wonder if women deal with that better than men do, just because of we have to.
Right.
When we have newborns. Right. I mean, same thing with pain. Like, you have to deal with it during childbirth. Like, right.
And whether we have kids or not, we have that biology. We still have those genetics to say, you have. I mean, how would humans continue? How would we evolve? How would any of that happen if women couldn't go nights without sleep and have very, very painful pregnancies and very deliveries and then come back from the aftermath of delivering a baby, which is just it's just something that doesn't happen in any other part of our lives. Right. We don't just go and rip tissue. Yeah. Men don't experience that.
No.
I haven't experienced that. And I'm not sad to have missed that one. But yes, we have to be able to do that. And it would make sense evolutionarily that we have some, women have some capability to withstand and thrive through pain that men may not have as much access to.
And we also have to forget about it and do it again.
Right. That's the other thing.
And I often wonder that. I'm like, gosh, we just forget about that so quickly, like with childbirth.
Yep.
It's like in a couple days or a week, you forget about the pain. And I often wonder that with racing
is
like
the same.
You just forget about it. You're like, oh, I forgot how much that hurt.
Right. And you remember that at mile something in the race, and you're like, while you're racing, you're like, why did I sign up for this again? But you keep doing it.
Yeah.
And that's regardless of sex.
Yeah.
Because we all feel it. And we all come back and do it again. Like there's something greater about running and racing than there is about pain.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So interesting.
It is so interesting.
Do you feel like physiologically in the last 20 years, like women have made incremental gains as far as like ultra running, or you feel like it's always been like the popular, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think women, no, I don't think physiologically we really have changed. But I think that, and this goes across from men and women, is that there's just more people doing the sport. So we are, with greater numbers, we're going to have more fast people. Mm-hmm. And those more fast people are going to teach the ones who come behind them, and like records always fall, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why did nobody run a 4-minute mile until Roger Bannister did? And then everyone starts running. Well, not everyone, but then many elite men were running sub 4-minute miles.
Yeah.
It wasn't that he was physiologically different. Mm-hmm. He was just the one to be able to say, no, that's not a barrier.
Right.
And I think that every time one of us breaks a record, it gives the person behind us that confidence that is if the course record used to be 20 hours and now it's 19, well, now we know we can break 20 hours.
Yeah.
And then so everybody comes to, I think there's such a huge mental component to this. Mm-hmm. Because we certainly don't evolve that quickly.
Yeah.
And granted, there's so much more media attention and money. I mean, like, people are now, guys are making a livable wage, a few of them.
Yeah.
From running. Maybe a couple, maybe some women are. I don't know. I don't think so. But we're starting to see, we're starting to get a lot of gain. And also, my generation of ultra runners, the women we all had to work full time because we weren't getting paid, or we weren't getting paid well. And so, I think the course records going down and people getting faster, that's just a natural evolution that happens in every sport. Mm-hmm. I mean, the science behind it gets better, the training gets better, the food gets better.
Yeah.
People, I remember one year this guy writing, oh, my time at Western States would have won in 1970, whatever. And I'm like, let's talk apples to apples. In 1970, you would have been in a canvas shoe, and you might have had a potato chip and a couple bottles of water.
Yeah.
Like, there, I find that very frustrating. I do think that each generation is still going to be the same qualities that bring those top people up. Mm-hmm. And we do build, like, I wouldn't have run the times I did had people not done similar things before me. I mean, I wouldn't have even known that was something to go for. And so each of us who publicizes the sport and who does good things in the sport makes it easier for the person coming up behind him or her.
Yeah. How long does it take for an ultra runner to peak? Like, how many years?
Yeah. That's a really good question. And I think, honestly, the science isn't there.
Yeah.
It just isn't. Evidence-based practice for us physical therapists is so important. How do I do evidence-based practice on somebody who's an ultra runner?
Right.
Like, I try to extrapolate from studies done on a marathoner? Yeah, maybe, but there are not even that many studies on those folks.
Yeah.
So, I really don't know that we know that, but I do know a couple things. One is that people tend to have a race career of somewhere between like 3 and 10 years where they're really, really good. But they don't seem to have much longer than that. Like there's a steep drop off in speed at some point. Mm-hmm. And is that mental? Is that physical? I don't know, because I'm not sure that how linked it is to actual chronological age. Mm-hmm. You might fly in your 20s and then by 31 you're kind of done.
Yeah.
Or your best 10 years might be 40 to 50. Mm-hmm. Like it seems that there's some equation out there between age, miles on your body, and hard races run, mm-hmm. and length of duration of your running career that would sort of point to when you might be best.
Yeah.
But I've seen I peaked at 36.
Yeah.
I've seen people peak in their 40s. I've seen people peak young. So it's all these N of one groups. I mean, it's really I'd love to know more about it, but it's just so multifactorial. How would we ever study it?
Right. Yeah. And everybody has different backgrounds in high school and college. And
Right.
So this would be a great transition to talk to you about Hard Rock this year. So talk to us about Hard Rock. For those of you who don't know, so Nikki came in second, right? Yeah. And we were all cheering her on, like on irunfar.com. And so just tell us about that, your age, and how that impacted you.
Yeah, Hard Rock was amazing. So Hard Rock 100 is something that was easy, a race that was easy to get into in the 90s. And now is so popular that, thousands of people apply for 140 something spots. So anyway, I've tried to get into it for years, and I finally got in, and I knew that at my peak I would run that course really, really well. It was really made for me. It's it was really high altitude. You're going over many peaks over 13,000 feet. You're not getting below 10,000 feet very often. I mean, it's just fantastic, and it's exposed, and it's rocky, and it's gnarly, and it's just steep and fun, and 33,000 feet of gain and 100 miles. It's awesome.
It doesn't sound that awesome to me.
So part of me really wanted to run it when I was younger and really, really strong, because I'm hours slower in a 100-mile race than I used to be. I mean, hours.
Yeah.
So for this race, I finally get in. I know I'm not at my best. I'd also been battling an injury from a snowshoe race that finally took me out later in the year. But I had actually been training for about 4 months because of this injury. It had sort of taken me out for a while. And I had 4 months of really fantastic training going into that. So not a lot, but I still had, 30 years of competition to go back on, or 40 years actually of competition to fall back on. So, so I get there and I know I'm not at my best, but I also know that 2 of the other top women in the race are also in their 40s, and we're all way past our prime.
Yeah.
And one person who was young, who won it, she's like, she's 20 years younger than me. She better be able to beat me. So anyway, there was so it was just this magical race where we just start, you're just running along talking to people, because that's a big part. I mean, ultra marathon culture is amazing, and it is shifting with the influx of money and influx of people self-promoting on social media. That stuff's really, really frustrating. But Hard Rock, the spirit of Hard Rock is very much in that old school ultra running. We all want to get it to the finish. I mean, yes, we're going to compete against each other, but we're also really supportive of each other. And we are having a few people in the sport who aren't supportive of their competitors, and that's really, really sad. But But at Hard Rock, I ended up, in this group of people. One who was a pre-PT student of mine.
Oh my gosh!
So he and I, along with with Darla Askew, was it Darla Askew and a couple other people, ended up in this group, in this 6-person group. And Jeff was my student. He and I were having a competition to see who could tell the most bad jokes, and so that was really fun. And this is the first 20 miles. We're just kind of chill and having fun, and you do things like talk and tell horrible jokes because it makes the time go, because you can't race for all 30 hours. You're going to race for the last couple. So that just sort of having that community around me just made me happy. And then I was running well, running up towards the front, and I had a bit of an explosion going. You have really bad patches, and I had this massive just meltdown after one aid station. I just kind of walking up through the woods and frustrated, and all I'm thinking is, even 5 years ago, I would be, I'd be 4 miles ahead of where I am right now, and it's only mile 20 or whatever, it was really hard. And I've been dealing with a slowdown for at least 8 years at this point. And I just laid down in the middle, mile 29, I just laid down in the woods where nobody could see me and just sort of thought about age and really had this sort of amazing epiphany of I'd laid there for 15 minutes. I've never something, I don't know, but just thinking about, why am I expecting myself to still be on the podium for the men in all these races when these men are now 20 years younger than me? And, this is I am asking my body to be what it was when I was 30 and when I was, in my mid 30s, and I'm 47. It was amazing to finally, after fighting and just being why am I slowing down? This is so frustrating. I'm training just as hard and I'm getting slower. And now the sport's popular and people are winning with times that were easy for me at one point in my life. And this is, just that sort of sour grapes of, and it finally sort of occurred to me that, in this little part of the race, and this is what ultra running does, is it pushes you so far that you have to think beyond the way you would think in normal situations. And it finally sort of dawned on me, this should have come more easily than this, but that I should be celebrating what my body can do instead of what it can't. I'm 47 and still running, 100-mile race with 30,000 feet of gain and being on the podium.
Yeah.
That's huge. And I'm doing it with somebody, with people I've run with my whole life, and with people who, with a former student of mine who is now just graduating PT school, and he actually ended up second for the men, so we ended up sharing the same podium spot. And he's 20 years younger than me, and it just made me think about what's important in ultra running. And really what drew me to it is that I love running in the woods, and that I love the mental clarity that comes with running, and I love the community of people who do this sport. And sort of getting back to that, despite a massive slowdown in my racing, was critical. And it's something that I've just been fighting. I've been fighting against my body changing rather than sort of managing it. Like we talk about managing chronic pain, managing depression, managing these things. We have to manage our aging. And instead I'm just, I was totally, no, my body doesn't obey the laws of physiology. I'm not aging, but you know what? I am. And I have to give myself a little permission to do that. So Hard Rock really gave me that back. Yes, I was probably 5 hours slower than I would have run it when I was 35. Yeah. But I should be. I'm 47 and I have 90,000 miles on my body. I shouldn't be fast anymore.
Yeah. And you still came in second.
And I still came in second. So
did you go faster? Was it this epiphany and then you're I can just do this?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
And yeah, because I had been caught by a bunch of people, and I was just like, and then I just sort of gave up the results. No, this is hard rock.
Yeah.
Like, this is the race people sell their soul to get into. Like, this is, I'm here in the most beautiful mountains. The San Juan Mountains are stunning. I am having this catered 100-mile trek through this beautiful country with amazing people. Like, why, that's what it is. Mm-hmm. Winning races is cool and that's fun and it's great, like it's a huge ego boost and all of that, but it's pretty shallow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, and it's fleeting. Like, you might win now, it doesn't mean you're going to win the next time. I mean, it just, there has to be something much, much bigger than results to get you to get you to do the sport. Mm-hmm. And I think giving up any care of where I finish and just being like, you will finish this, mm-hmm. It's a gift to be able to get into this race, and unless you're injured, you better finish.
Yeah.
And so, but it was just a good sort of cap to my running career.
Yeah. It almost seems like that's almost a gift of aging, because maybe you couldn't think like that when you were 35 and you did have another race,
Right.
Like, I always did have the next thing, and now you're like, I can just do this for fun.
Right. And I can coach other people.
Yeah.
And coach them in a way where I keep them, where I attempt to keep my, use my my physical therapy knowledge and get people, make them, help them to run without injury, or to get any injury that comes up. We treat it immediately. Mm-hmm. We immediately manage it. We don't, we don't just, run somebody into the ground. And there's, so many people coaching. There's no oversight in coaching, mm-hmm. who maybe took a 3-day course and have a certification. That does not make them a knowledgeable coach. And we're seeing that all the time. And so I love that I get to coach, and I keep about 8 clients at a time, because I don't want more than that, because then I can't take care of them. I can't help them. And I want people to love running, and I want it to be healthy. And a lot of the people I work with use running as part of their mental health treatment plan. And if you're treating depression with running and you have an injury, it's disastrous. I mean, you could die.
Yeah.
And so, keeping people running healthy is my new thing. That's my, it's like, okay, yeah, it was great to, be the best trail ultra runner in the world for a while. That was awesome. That was really fun. It was great. But now, it's, now it's more about like what running's really about, and what it always has been about, but I probably lost sight of when, traveling the world and, and winning stuff. So
let's talk about your coaching, because I think it would be pretty cool to be coached by a world champion. So why don't you talk?
Well, not technically a world champion.
Not technically. Okay, we're not technically one of the best in the world. Yeah. How is that?
Yeah.
So tell us about your coaching and what you do, and how you get clients.
If I coach people locally, I mean, it's, I'm sort of just starting. I've taken people under my wing my entire running career, and sort of coached without coaching. And now if I coach people locally, it's amazing, because I actually get my hands on them. Mm-hmm. I can do a screen of where are they tight, where are they strong, where are they weak, where are they loose, where, is there something funky going on with their running? Has somebody tried to change their running gait? Because that usually messes stuff up, because you have all these people who, went to a Chi running course and think they know biomechanics.
Right.
And usually massive changes to people's gait gets them injured. So I just like being the person who runners can come to for physical therapy and for coaching, who can hopefully do a better job of predicting and avoiding injury.
Yeah.
And I've treated runners for 20 years as a physical therapist. I mean, again, because our evidence isn't great, we have to combine biomechanical knowledge with physical therapy evidence on sports that might be similar and on our experience.
Yeah.
I mean, I just look back to the 1990s. I'm like, how the heck did anyone I treat get better? Like, it was luck. Because, I think of all the mistakes I made in my first, and I'm still making mistakes, but the horrible mistakes I would make, things I would miss in my first 10 years of treating runners. I mean, I think that's what I can offer in coaching is something that's just well beyond what, your person who never studied physiology or mechanics or something. And there are some people who are self-taught coaches who are very, very good, but they have to, they have a lot to catch up on.
And do you coach remotely too? And ever work with like physical therapists remotely? Like you do the screen, tell me what you found, I'll do the coaching.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I think that's critical.
Yeah.
But the hard thing is knowing who the physical therapist is in that area.
Yeah.
And I almost think, because all of my clients, I have a Bozeman client right now whose wife is on sabbatical from the MSU, so he's traveling around. So when he's in another place, like, who do I send him to for PT?
Right.
And I don't insist. I need hands on the people who I coach if I can. Like, I want to know how they're doing, but I certainly don't insist that they use me as a physical therapist, because that's referral for profit, and I'm not okay with that.
Yeah.
And there are fantastic running PTs in town.
Yeah.
So, I've got great people to send my people to, and sometimes they come to me, often they do, and that's great too. But if I'm missing something, I want to call in another therapist, because why not? Why not use that knowledge that's there? So really what I found is the best thing I've come up with working with a PT, if I don't know the area, is having the athlete go to the running store, running specialty store, and say, who's good here?
Yeah.
Not to say that's always going to give you the best result, but you want to go to a therapist who has seen runners, who's worked with runners, because it's just a different skill. I mean, you're not going to come to me for neck pain, because I know just enough to give you really be a problem. So I think that can help. And then, physical therapists who specialize on treating runners, we're super geeky about it. And we love when our patient comes and says, hey, can you talk to my coach? He's also a PT or ex-phys. I mean, oftentimes, or a physiologist. I mean, my strength in biomechanics, I also have a weakness in physiology, because we don't study it as much. Right. So it's great to be able to talk. If one of my patients says, hey, I want you to talk to my coach, and they, sign their release, it's fun to talk to their coach and be like, hey, and you just, the coach is going to see something different than the PT is. And, and you really work together. I love that part of it.
Oh yeah. I'm even with me, when I have, women who come to me that leak when they run, I'm like, I'm really good at making you not leak when you run, maybe making you not have prolapse symptoms when you run. I'm not your performance coach. Like, you go see X person, Absolutely. And they're going to like dork out on the stride and, the form and everything. Right. But I can help your pelvic floor when you're running.
Exactly. And that's why we specialize.
Right. I was like, you can geek out with running. Like, I could go to so many courses, and I don't have time to do that. It's not my forte, but these people are really good at it.
And the thing is, you're really good at women's health pelvic floor stuff because it's what you do.
Right.
And you apply the geekiness of pelvic floor health that I apply to running. So of course, of course I want my person with incontinence to see you, and my person who's a runner to see me, and I
think if we all shared, it would be so great, because as you realize how much more you don't know. Even when I have an injury, I go see a PT. Right. Like, I'm not treating myself.
The thing is, we mess up so badly.
I don't do stuff.
Right.
Like, I never do it.
Yeah.
So
if your PT tells you to do it,
if my PT tells me to do it, I do it. And they do hands-on things that are just so different. And so I go see PTs all the time for my stuff, because I'm really good at what I do, and they're really good at their niche and what they do. And PT is such a huge field that you can't be good at everything.
You can't.
No.
You can't.
Well, so where can people find you if they want coaching?
Well, coaching, basically, I've always done it word of mouth, but it's Nikki Kimball@Yahoo.
Okay.
Is sort of my public address that people can reach me at. Facebook doesn't really work because I get frustrated with Facebook and don't answer stuff. But Nikki Kimball@Yahoo is, and then I give you my more proper address after that. I just love coaching people who want to do this at all levels, But again, I'm going to coach somebody for mostly ultra running, or I love coaching people in their 50s, 60s, 70s for shorter distance stuff, because I think I think masters and veteran athletes, athletes over 50, they have so much to gain from sport, and it's something that even with the book knowledge I have, there is no way I could have coached people past 45 and before I realized a massive slowdown myself. It doesn't matter that you get it intellectually. Yeah. You don't get it till you feel it. Mm-hmm. And when I'm 3 minutes a mile slower than I was at my best,
age is something.
It is.
Yeah, it totally is. I mean, it's the same thing when, I have pregnant women that have never had a baby before. Yeah. And then want to run I thought I could run a 5K like 8 weeks after I had a baby, because you don't know until it happens to you. And then you're like, oh, yeah, like I do get slower with age. Yeah. Childbirth does something to your body. Right. But you don't know until you experience it. And you can't expect someone to know that.
You can't.
That's the other thing.
I mean, it's not like all parents throughout history haven't told their kids. Right. Yeah. You just wait, sonny. Yeah. I mean, but it doesn't matter. We can say those things. It doesn't, you don't get it till you go through it. I mean, I think book knowledge is super, super important, and evidence and all that, but experience can't be discounted.
Well, and it's also really nice to have someone that has gone through it and knows. Yeah. Because you want someone that has been through it and knows what to do and has experienced that, so they can have empathy for you as a person, as a athlete,
and assist you. And also, if it took me 9 years to come to terms with my aging as an athlete, well, why would I expect my 57-year-old runner to be okay with running a 30-minute 5K when she used to run a 20-minute 5K? Like how? Yeah. Like it's important. To have gone through that, and I don't know, seeing as it took me forever to teach myself that lesson, and I still don't think I'm completely there. I don't know how well I do working, helping people through that. But I wish I had somebody who had gone through that slowdown with me when I did.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Is there anything else you want to talk about? No. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening, and please subscribe to the podcast at podcast.healthywealthysmart.com. And don't forget to follow us on social media.